Well, hello and welcome to the live update for today, which is Thursday, July 14th. I am here with Mr. Jonathan Porter of Chicago Pizza Tour. Say hi to the world, Jonathan.
Hey, everybody.
He's actually just getting off of a tour, so he's burning the candle at both ends here. So I appreciate your time, and we'll try to get through our our questions and knowledge for all our subscribers and viewers. So
it affords me a wonderful opportunity to do this live from a pizzeria too. So I always love that.
Yeah, that's great too. I was going to say if you wanted to bring them over or talk with some of your tour folk, that would be awesome. The more the merrier. But
I just sent them out of here. I was like, I got to go, guys.
I got other work to do. So basically, we're just going to start this. Who is your daddy and what does he do? That was a terrible Schwarzenegger. I'm sorry. Jonathan, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do out there.
So my name's Jonathan Porter. I'm the founder and basically the main operator of Chicago Pizza Tours. I founded the company back in 2010. And at the time, it's definitely changed over the years just a little bit. But at the time, my thought was, some of the big name deep dish pizzerias were in the downtown area. And I wanted to do a bus driven tour that would start at something that was culturally significant, meaning it had to do something with the invention of the deep dish pizza in Chicago at a centrally located place downtown for that. But then I wanted to take people on a bus and get them out into the neighborhoods where different type of pizza exists and that we could really explore, what Chicago is like for pizza, because it has its own culture here. And New York has a really strong culture for pizza, but they're very different from each other. So it was really just a way to really showcase what it's like to have lived in Chicago and the pizza scene growing up. And the coolest thing about it too was like, starting in the early to mid 2000s, 2000 to 2005 or so, the pizza scene started to evolve a little bit in Chicago. And even more so after I started the company in 2010. So over the years, the tour has just grown as far as types of places that we go to and types of pizza that we showcase. Chicago's we're known for that deep dish pizza, but I mean, to be honest with you, it's special occasion pizza, right? Like we have pizza once a week, maybe twice a week. Growing up, it wasn't going to be a deep dish pizza every time. That's kind of like kicking a tennis shoe around in a dryer, right? That's a lot to digest. We do a lot of tavern style thin crust. And then we also do a lot of others. And where those pizzas really were embraced were in the neighborhood. So I always wanted to do this bus-driven tour. But then even the landscape of pizzas changed since then. And we were able to develop some more walking tours that really featured a lot of different pizzas. So all in all, it's been about a little more than 10 years we've been running these tours. Or I'm sorry, more than 12 years at this point. We've taken out more than 85,000 people on professionally guided tours of pizzerias.
That is insane, man. And yeah, everybody forgets the 2 years of COVID. We're all doing that last year, and it was 3 years ago.
It's a solid 15 months here at least. Yeah.
So you kind of jumped onto it. What defines the Chicago pizza scene? I know you said like the deep dish and stuff. Those are more the special occasions. Do you find that Tavern style is the least well-known Chicago style pizza, and it's probably the most eaten by locals, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it is the biggest misnomer that we kind of dispel at the beginning of the tour is that, we tell them basically, we do kind of a Price is Right thing, right? Like closest to without going over. And we source through PMQ how many individual operators there are in the Chicagoland area. And I have them place their bids, and all that. And when they finally get close, and they never do. Sometimes people say, oh, 3 dozen or 200 or something like that. And, it's more than 2,100 at this point. But what I tell them is that the bulk of them, more than 80% of those pizzerias are doing tavern style thin crust. That is the regular go-to pizza for Chicagoans. Right. And it's the one that I couldn't wait to put it on the tour. It's right now I'm at Flo and Sano's in the South Loop. It's one of my favorite stops on the tour. I tell them this is your run-of-the-mill tavern-style pizza, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that this is the most accurate representation of what it's like to eat pizza growing up here in Chicago.
But yeah, the best prime example that the keystone to hold at the benchmark is what I was looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you said it was Flo and Santos. So yeah, we got.
Yeah, I'm at Flo and Santos right now. We had some Italian beef pizza. We had it's Italian beef, jardinere, fire roasted tomatoes, and caramelized onions for their Marcos. And then they also Flo and Santos is owned by the grandkids of Flo and Santo. Flo is the Polish lady. Santo was the Italian guy. This entire restaurant's an amalgamation of their Sunday dinners. But this is the only place I know that does a Polish pizza. And it's applewood smoked bacon, kielbasa, which is a traditional Polish sausage, and a little bit of sauerkraut ties it all in together. I know it sounds crazy. It's super delicious.
This is Flo's Polish right here.
There it is. Yeah, Flo's Polish.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, there you go. See, this is why we're coming to you, man, because you know the pizza to go look for in Chicago that maybe somebody might look at that and say, what? No, thank you.
Right. So they were on there's a TV show here in Chicago that was on the air for the longest time called Chicago's Best. And it featured all this, great Chicago stuff. And they were known for their Polish food here. So they came in, they were trying some of the Polish food. And the head chef here is like, hey, we got a Polish pizza, right? So they put that on air and they showed it. And I think prior to that airing, they were selling like 25 Polish pizzas like a day or something like that. As soon as that aired, it went up to 125 a day they were selling.
Yeah, and it's the power of marketing, and just make sure you got something good and unique that maybe people don't know about.
Yeah.
And I think people anymore now, they're at home, they're taking longer to look at menus because they're ordering online. So this is the time to get those hidden gems on your menu, push them to the front, let people see them, sell that high-end product.
It's crazy. People go to a restaurant these days. They've seen that menu for 2 weeks prior to going into that restaurant. They know exactly what they want. The server could come over and say, are you guys ready for drinks or whatever? They're like, I'm having this, I'm having that. Yeah. So you got to do your online presence and let your customers know what's available and what they should be ordering.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to say, what does the Chicago pizza scene look like in general? We have kind of talked about that. You said it's kind of growing out, and it is more than deep dish and tavern style, especially your tours as well, because I believe I was looking at the website and you got the other ones that like the Big Shoulders downtown.
Yeah.
That's your deep dish, your artisanal, and
right. So it's crazy. So since I always say that I go back to 2001 is when it really started that was like the jumping point for us to start changing, and that's when Peace opened up in Bucktown. I was living in Bucktown at the time. And Bill Jacobs, with some investors, opened up Peace, and it was New Haven style pizza. And I remember the first time I ordered the pizza, they're like, I'm on a landline, by the way, it's 2001. And they're like, do you want a red, white, or a plain? And I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. Hold on. I had to go on the internet and look it all up. So that was really the kind of the spark that started there. And then Spaccanapoli in 2006 doing Neapolitan pizza. Coal Fire, I believe, was 2007 or maybe 2009. I think it's 2007. So you started to see some of these different styles of pizza, and where they were setting up shop wasn't necessarily the downtown area of Chicago. It was out in the neighborhoods, and that's where I was living at the time. I had spent years in Bucktown, spent years in Lakeview and the South Loop and all that. So the more and more of these, Chicago, we're stuck on our two main styles, the deep dish and the tavern style. And of course, there's stuffed pizza too, if you want to break that down into another one. It is constructed completely differently. But so those are the three main styles, but we also embrace other styles. So on that downtown pizza walk that we talked about, we start out at a place called Robert's Pizza and Dough Company. And Robert comes to us from Queens, New York, from Woodhaven more specifically. And it's like an artisanal slice that you would find this brick oven artisanal slice that I when I met with Robert, I told him it reminded me of Arturo's down on Houston in the Village there, 1957 coal oven pizzeria and jazz joint. Just incredible stuff using a Polish sourdough starter, brick ovens, and about a 6-minute bake where it's real crispy, a little bit foldable, but it breaks and not all the way through. So on that particular tour, we start out over at Robert's. We make our way to La Briola for that stereotypical deep dish pan pizza, which really has a bread influence too. It's a little bit more, whereas most of the original deep dish places had that biscuity type dough. Rich La Briola is a little bit more bread focused because he was in the bread business before the pizza business.
Okay.
And then from there, I tell guests, pizza, it's an immigrant food, right? And when it comes to America, it takes on a new form because they're bringing it with them, but they're not bringing their ingredients, their ovens. They're using what's local and all that. So it starts to change everywhere it goes. So that's why New York pizza is different than Chicago pizza. It's different than Detroit pizza. So I talk about how pizza really is like the closest thing we have to a universal food on this planet, but it's different everywhere it goes. So then we go from those first two, which is an artisanal brick oven slice, to a deep dish slice. we go to Italy and we visit their pizza bar upstairs there for a Neapolitan slice, and we see what we think of as the first modern day pizza, the street food of Naples, in going
Mhm.
back to the 19th century or so. And I talk about how that really was sort of the blueprints for which the artisanal slice that we had earlier became. And then from there, I talk about how if you go to pizza, if you want to go get pizza in Italy, Italy's got different regions, and pizza's done differently in each one of those regions. So Roman pizza much different than Neapolitan pizza, in the same way that Chicago pizza is different from New York pizza. So we finished with a very light Roman pizza at Bar Cargo as well. It's an incredible journey through, like, I didn't know that this was all pizza, and it's all very, very different. So. Mhm.
Well, and that's amazing. And I was going to kind of ask you, what do you get on a tour? But for me, it sounds like, and I'm very proud of my alliteration, but you get a lot of education and examples. So it's less about you just saying, hey, these guys got good pizza, let's go eat. You're educating them on the way there while they're eating, and then on the way to the next one, and maybe even offering, saying this is different from these guys because, and then you fill in the blank.
I mean, you're right. I figured 12 years ago when we were first starting here, anybody can feed them, and anybody can figure out where good food is. Like, I needed to make sure that we told a story as we went across this, and we conveyed what it was like. My original thought was with that first bus driven tour is I wanted to show people that were visiting Chicago what it was like to live in Chicago, and to eat like a local, not to go to the big names downtown, but to see Chicago from a local's viewpoint. But then what made that sort of change even quicker, and I had to make it like almost hyper local, was the fact that 40% of our customers were local Chicagoans. So I just assumed that we would sell it to nothing but people visiting Chicago, and then it was like, oh my gosh, there's this whole contingent of people that want to just do a pizza tour in their own city. So it was really, really cool. It made us take it to the next level, basically.
Well, that, I guess, I could see very much how that would be an unexpected, group of customers. I mean, were they excited to learn about pizza in Chicago, or did they come in kind of with a know-it-all attitude and just wanted you to take them to good spots, or were they genuinely learning?
Yeah, it's kind of like a hybrid of that. It was a little bit of that. Yeah, because they wanted to hear what I had to say. They wanted to see what places I thought were, and I'm putting this in air quotes here, tour worthy, because I hate that saying, but that's how they would always frame it to me. But then, as we were doing that, and they were always having a good time, they wanted to tell me about their spot. Right. And like Chicagoland is a huge area. So when I say locals, I'm not talking about just the people that live in the city proper. I'm talking about, the suburbs as well. So just now, as I was finishing with this group, they're like, do you know a place called Charlotte's in Palatine? And actually, it's not called Charlotte's anymore. She passed away. It's now called Remembering Charlotte's, but it's not in Palatine. It's in Barrington. I'm like, all right, hold on. I got to remember this. It's all that.
So write this down.
Yes, exactly. So I found that a lot of people, they were coming, they were learning, they were enjoying what I put together, but they also wanted to tell me about their spot, the pizza that they grew up eating. And that's what makes pizza so great and so sociable, is the fact that, like, they were excited to do the tour that I had built, but they also were so excited for me, if I was ever in that neck of the woods, to go out and try that pizza as well. And it moves people. You want to tell people about your favorite pizza.
Yeah, well, it's like my mom, if she was on the tour or watching this, she would probably say, have you ever heard of San Fratello's? And I don't think they're around anymore, but it's out Glenwood, Homewood area, I think. And
okay.
But, it was built in a house, and they kept adding to the house. And, it's just weird. And then she went to high school with Joe Aurelio, and he was best man at one of my uncle's weddings. It's really weird. I didn't find that out until a couple years ago. So
he is a super
but
nice
Chicago
guy.
Pizza scene is, that's what I'm saying. I kind of know what you're talking about. The Chicago guys, I like how they're like, they give you the opportunity to tell your story, but they, then they're going to blast at you and tell you if they think you're wrong too. But
I will tell you this too. In the first year that I did it, so like that the summer of 2010, I can't even tell you how many guys I had come up to me that were like, this was my idea back in 1986 or something. I had so many of those. I think I started counting it at first, and then I was like, this is going to keep going on forever. So it was cool.
Well, you had a good idea, buddy.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. I never knew what to say to that. I'm like, oh, all right.
Well, I do want to ask you. I guess this is for not saying tour worthy, but what do you look for in a tour shop? What do you look for to put something on your list that you want to showcase to tourists and or locals?
Well, I mean that's a good question and a good way to frame it. It has to work in totality of all the other places that come with it. So there are, I mean, hundreds of really good pizzerias that I would love to showcase, but it might not make sense on certain tours and stuff.
Hmm.
We'd like to do a variety of styles of pizza. On the bus driven one, I want to do two types of deep dish because that's what the people are coming for. They sign up for a
Yeah.
Chicago pizza tour. They know they're getting some deep dish, right? So I don't want to completely withhold that from them. So I'd like to do two types of deep dish and two deep dishes that are very different from each other. So just a standard example would be on our Saturday tour, we start out at Paisanos. Paisanos has been our home base for the last 12 years. It was owned by Rudy Malnati Jr. of the Malnati family. Very big, important name when it comes to deep dish here in Chicago. And his deep dish is actually kind of thin for a deep dish pizza. It's a great starting location across the street from Millennium Park. So I put that deep dish on there, and I'll juxtapose it with a place called Bartoli's. And Bartoli's is owned by a guy named Brian Tondrick, who he's the grandson of one of the original founders of Gino's East, Fred Bartoli. And his deep dish, oh my gosh, it's so good. It reminds me of being a kid. When I was a kid, we used to basically, and I don't want to say sneak out of the house, but we kind of snuck out of the house and went down to Chicago. My buddy had a brother who had a driver's license, and we would come down, throw some quarters in the parking meter, wait outside of Gino's East and get that. When I first had his pizza it had to have been 2013 that he opened up in Lakeview. We literally were heading to another pizzeria called Pete's for thin crust pizza. We saw the Bartoli sign and we're like, I wonder if that has anything to do with the original Gino's East founder. So we just, pulled a 180, parked the car, went in, waited the 45 minutes for a pizza. And it reminded me of being a kid and sneaking out of my house to go downtown to eat pizza. So I think he's doing a fabulous job of carrying on the legacy of his grandfather there. That pizza is so different from the Paisanos one. So if we break down, that's the first pizza that you're going to get on the tour and the last pizza. In between those two, I like to bring them to Flo and Sano's for a thin crust tavern style pizza and coal fire for something sort of off the wall that doesn't fit the mold of any sort of traditional Chicago, something that's part of the 21st century of culture. There are other pizzerias that I like. So like maybe Peace might swap out for coal fire on a certain tour. And there's other Paulie G's Logan Square does a phenomenal job for his Detroits, also for his wood fired. So that's another one where I love to bring a group there. And it's amazing too. Like when you show up to some of these neighborhoods, like, Westtown or Bucktown or Logan Square, something like that, you don't see the big buildings anymore. You're in this major city. And you're like, wait a minute, I don't see the Sears Tower or Willis Tower, whatever you want to call it. I don't see that anymore. I'm like, oh yeah, are we still in Chicago? Oh yeah, Chicago's a pretty big city. It goes on for a while. You'd be surprised how long you could drive in Chicago and not leave the city limits. So, so I really like putting. I like to take into account neighborhoods, styles of pizza, and then some places do other toppings better than others too. So like, I really like to do a variety of toppings as we go through too. And I do I've been doing it for 12 years, so I do a good enough job where I let them feel like I'm asking them what they want on their pizza, but I just give them what I was going to do anyways. So I give them that illusion that they're ordering it, and I'm just giving them what I want to be.
I love it though, but honestly, if somebody was smart, they would. I mean, it's like when you go to test out a pizzeria, I typically get a cheese or a margarita or something.
Pizza
Can't do that, right? Then, yeah. So I would ask the professional, I was like, what do you recommend? Let me try that first. And then I'll go from there and then play with my own flavors. But that's the great thing about Chicago pizza too. And I guess in the big cities, it's very much like that. Even like Detroit and all that is like the pizzerias stay in the families for generations, for a long time. And even the pizza culture in all these cities have often sprouted from like one single pizzeria. You get one, which is the genesis of pizza in that town, and then people who work there started their own, or family members or cousins.
It's always a cousin. Yep, yeah, absolutely right. It's always a cousin.
And sometimes it's amicable, and sometimes they just grab the shit and ran. And so it's like it's mine now. So, but it's fun to see that the legacy the pizza legacy that any town has, and it's all different. And if they make movies about this stuff, I would watch it. But I mean, you can get some interesting stuff people don't know. But there's a lot of fun, crazy stuff that goes on in the pizza world. So
when it involves restaurants, money, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've heard some mafia tales too. So there's mafia's everywhere though, or
Yeah.
I don't think they exist. Never mind.
No, they're gone now. They're all gone. Yeah.
Yes. So, I was gonna say, what did your journey teach you about pizza in Chicago? But it sounds like you've just answered that, but this is also what you're teaching everybody who's on your tours. I'm actually jumping all over here. So
that's all right. I do that all the time.
Yeah. So the traits of Chicago style, because what I'm leading to is we're having a Chicago competition as well, August 23rd through 25th, Chicago style pizza competition. I want to ask, and I think you're judging. We've talked, maybe yes or no.
I don't know if it's official yet, but I'm hoping that I am. So yeah. I've definitely had some time. Oh, all right. I'm
the guy. So yes,
okay.
It was more me. I didn't know if you wanted to. So all right, it's official now.
Yeah.
So, and that's perfect. And I might even send you the scorecards and ask for your input on that, because what I really want to do, it's actually going to be these questions. What are the traits of Chicago style pizza? And we're not doing stuffed. I'm doing a deep dish and a tavern style. If you want to do stuffed, it's going to be categorized in deep dish. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was just difficult to try to do 3 different ones, and how many stuffed might you get? So
right, and yeah. Well, let's talk about. Let's talk first about the construction of a deep dish pizza. Well, let's start with that. So you've got your dough, which is it's typically a Midwestern flour that you're using for your dough, and you've got some yeast, some sugar, water. Your hydration's probably in the high 50s or so, but then your olive oil or whatever oil, corn oil that you're using in there, that's going to be up a little bit higher than you would for a standard pizza. And then when you build that pizza, you've got about a 2-inch thick, I'll just call it a deep dish pan, but I believe some of the first deep dish pans were probably cake pans that were kind of converted into these. And the more well-seasoned, the better. Because I could tell, even when I go into these restaurants and they have to get a new shipment of pans in, if they don't take the time to properly season these things, you don't have all that flavor in the crust. So heavily oiled pan, you take that dough, you slap it down right in the middle, and then you spin the pan as you use your hands to kind of work the dough all the way to the edges. Pull it up on the sides, slices of mozzarella, always slices when it comes to deep dish pizza. And I mean, we've seen everything from like a part skim, low moisture mozzarella to a whole milk, low moisture mozzarella as well. Depends on the pizza maker. If he wants, I always look for balance. But some of these pizza makers really like to have that cheese make kind of a statement. And I understand that too, because there's going to be a lot more tomato sauce on it than there is on a traditional pizza. So you need more crust, more cheese to kind of balance that out a little bit. So I go for a nice flavorful cheese. If the more fat, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And then, so once you get your slices down, and I actually found out from Mark Malnati. All right, we were working on a book, and we were in the kitchen at Lou Malnati's. And he turns to me and says, "Hey, you know why we do slices on deep dish pizza now all the time, right?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." I thought it was so cool. I'm like, it's because you don't want any of that liquidy sauce from on top to get into your dough and sagify your dough. And I know sagify is not a real word, but that's what I like to say. And he just looked at me and said, "No." And I was like, "All right, what was it?" They always wanted a flat surface so that they could put the sausage down quicker. It was about doing speed and because the pizza was going to bake for 40 minutes in the oven. They needed a flat surface to go. They can grab the sausage, pinch it, and push it down with their hands. So they always wanted a flat surface. If you use shredded cheese, you're kind of fumbling to get that sausage down all the time. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And I thought that also it's kind of a byproduct of it that it keeps that tomato sauce from getting in there. So we've got our cheese, our sausage, a heavy garlic sausage here in Chicago, lean, gotta be lean because it's going in the oven for a while. And then I like a nice chunky tomato sauce too. Most of the time, most of these places are doing California grown plum tomatoes, whole peeled, hand squeezed, uncooked. Like first time that tomato cooks is right when it goes into the oven for the first time, built all together. And one of the most popular pizzas in Chicago would be what we call the smog, which is basically sausage, mushroom, green pepper, and onion. Yeah, I got that right. But
sausage. Yeah,
Sausage, mushroom,
Yeah, that's what Joe was telling me.
Yeah,
Onion,
yeah,
green pepper,
yeah,
sausage, mushroom,
exactly.
onion, green pepper.
I think we call it the smog. I got the order wrong when I said it there,
Yeah,
but sausage,
you said it
mushroom,
as the
onion, green pepper.
schmo.
Yeah, exactly. But that's like your standard deep dish pizza. What I am seeing though now is that in those crusts that we first talked about, it has more of a biscuity texture, kind of brittle all the way through. But what I'm starting to see as deep dish evolves here in Chicago is people that are taking more artisan bread like dough mixtures and applying that to the deep dish concept. So we're finding some deep dish pizzas that are a little bit lighter, airier. Like if you literally, and I don't recommend anybody do this, but if you took your hand and you just smashed down your deep dish slice, you could push all the air out of it. Don't do that, but you could do it. So, and that's like a place like Pequod's or La Briola,
Yeah.
or some of those Bert's Place is another one, and those are all the what we call the deep dish pan pizza. So now we've got another subcategory of deep dish, but it can get confusing quickly.
Well, and I like how you said too, well-oiled pans, because I was messing with it the other day, and I let it sit overnight. I wanted to see how it did in the pan, and it absorbed most of that oil, so it wasn't in the pan, and it completely changed the bacon. It wasn't as crispy as that first one. It didn't have the fry. It didn't fry the dough at the bottom.
Okay.
So, I mean, is that something that you're looking for in a Chicago deep dish? That crispy, fried, crunchy bottom.
So as I'm cutting through, because it's fork and knife pizza, right? It's fork and knife for a little while. People are always like, fork and knife, can I pick it up? It's fork and knife till you get to the end. Then you can pick it up and eat the rest of it.
Yep.
But I'm looking for that break all the way through at the bottom there. I would love for it to be a little bit soft, where as you're going through the cheese, the toppings, and the first layer of dough as you're getting through. And as you get to the bottom of that dough, I want that brittleness on the bottom. I want to be able to break off a piece, throw that in my mouth, and chew on it.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, because I mean, that's also going to help, because it is such a large, heavy slice. It's going to help a little bit in the holding up of the ingredients. But right. I like how you said it. I never felt bad using a knife and fork. I mean, I want to stay clean, and you're absolutely right. Once you get to about this close to the edge, you can pick it up, and it looks more like a watermelon rind at that point. So.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I've never used that. I might start using that going forward.
Very good. All right, that one's free. So what about a tavern style? Now I know as far as like a deep dish and a stuffed, I mean, what's the major difference on that? Just it has the crust lid and then the sauce on top of that.
Right. So the tavern style is basically, when you think about where this pizza came from, right? It starts out in the post World War II in the taverns on the south side of Chicago, and you had I always say you got the 3 P's at the bars, the peanuts, the pretzels, and the popcorn. And the one thing that those all have in common besides germs is that they've got salt. They keep their people drinking a little bit longer. So pizza was just kind of a natural segue into that. So these guys would basically, they weren't artisan bread bakers. They were taking a Midwestern flour, adding water, yeast, a little bit of sugar again, giving that yeast something to feed. And they were basically building a cracker thin, crispy, like flatbread type crust. And something that you could roll out, because again, these guys weren't, great artisan bread bakers. So they were engineering these pizzas in the taverns on the south side. And the reason they always cut them up into squares, it's a circular pizza, and they cut it into squares. And the reason for that was because that none of these taverns had forks, plates, anything like that. It had to fit on a cocktail napkin, and that's why you got those little squares for it. So what I'm looking for out of a good Chicago tavern style pizza, I want that crust to be super crispy, especially the exterior pieces. So one of the great things about cutting it into squares is you have the exterior pieces are super crispy. Those get burnt a little bit more. But then the interior ones are a little bit softer and foldable. But there's such a little tiny slice. You just kind of fold it over, throw it right in, and you're good to go. So you really get both textures in there. But I'm looking for a nice crispy crust on the bottom. And then we're looking for a sweet sauce, typically. It can be either a sweet sauce or a spicy sauce with Southside Style Tavern. But I really elect for a sweet sauce. And it's usually, again, you're talking Central Valley, California, tomato. At the place I'm at right now, Florenzanos, what they do with their sauce is they'll use the Alta Cacinas from Stanislaw, and they will roast carrots in the oven with a little bit of olive oil and emulsify it all together. And that cuts some of the acidity, and carrots just are naturally high in sugar, so it adds a little bit more sweetness to that sauce and thickens it up. So it's
Wow.
great. And if you didn't know that carrots were in that sauce, you would not taste it. But if I tell you right before you take a bite, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, John, I'm getting that. There's a little bit of carrot to this too." So, so you want just kind of like a not super liquidy, but not super thick, not chunky by any means, but just a little thicker sweet sauce that you've got from the tavern style. And then probably the most famous of the cheeses for these tavern style pizzas is the Mancuso family, which is based out of Joliet, Illinois. They kind of like that pizza that you got showing up right there. You see the exterior pieces are much crispier, but those interior pieces are almost foldable. And that Mancuso cheese that tends to burn a little bit more. I think there's just a little bit more titanium oxides in there, the TiO2s, and I'm not knocking it. It's exactly perfect for what we're going for.
Right.
You want that cheese to just burn and harden just a little bit on that too. And the toppings, they can be plentiful on a tavern style pizza. Like you said, start out with a cheese. If you can't make a cheese pizza good, then there's no reason to try the rest. But sausage is the number one topping in Chicago by far. Across the country, pepperoni, but here in Chicago, it's all about sausage.
Yeah, and that's there. It's gone again. But I mean, tavern style all the way to the edge, as close as possible.
Right. Yeah. There's no heel, handle, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever peeks out gets burnt, like you said, which is always adds a nice little bit of flavor at the end. And
my favorite part.
You hit the nail on the head with everything. It's just fold them. They're like a bite size type thing, and it's made to share and it's made to be easy.
Yeah.
I did have a question for you because we're talking about what should a competitor look for when they're trying to compete? What should they be focusing on?
Right.
Is there such a thing as too thin for it? Because now Milwaukee Tavern style, that's like
I know.
So
I love it too. I love it. Yeah, Zafiro's is one of my favorite, one of my go-tos.
Right, it's good, but it's different. So, I mean, if you were judging, which you're going to be, and you're going to help me build a scorecard, will there be categories for too thin?
I would not dock anyone points for being too thin. And because you can do that here. There's actually a new tavern style place that opened up here in the West Loop called Paper Thin Pizza, and that's one of their things. Is that it's like you can practically read a newspaper through the crust there. There's a place called Marie's Liquor and Lounge or whatever on the north side of Chicago. I went there with 4 buddies a few years ago, and we ordered 5 large pizzas, and we ate all of it. It's so thin. You just keep snacking and snacking and snacking. And what the great thing about Marie's is you walk in, and it's like a lounge, like a 1970s lounge type look to it. They have not updated it at all. They got the shutters that go to the bathroom. But when you leave, you have to go through their liquor store on the way out. There's only one way out of it. Yeah, literally have to walk through a liquor store. But no, I would not dock people points for extra thin. The thinner it gets, the crispier it's going to be. You just got to make sure you have enough crust on the bottom to make sure it doesn't burn all the way through. But I love it. I love it thin. There's also we'll see some places like do like a double dough. So it's basically the weight of 2 dough balls flattened into one. So it's kind of a thicker tavern style. It's still thinner than most pizzas would be. But with that one, you don't get that crispiness. There really is kind of that soft, gummy type. And that's not one that I was used to growing up as much. I don't like knock that pizza, but I lean towards the thinner, crispier versions than that.
But as you said, inside of Chicago tavern style, like those not edge parts, they are still a little bit, they're foldable. They're not going to snap, but they do have a crisp to it. You might get a couple cracks or something like that, but you don't want it to be every single part is going to shatter if you drop it. So
I was going to say, out of you got about 16 slices in a tavern style pizza, about 6 of them you can fold.
Yeah, right. No, very good. Okay. That'll definitely help. I didn't know. I mean, at this point, I know it's got to go to the edge. It's got to be thin. I mean, is there something where it's too thick? Would you put points without giving a measurement and they pulled out a ruler? But would you say, I mean, it would be something like too thick and you would gauge it on it. Was it too thick, 1 to 10?
I would definitely err on the side of being too thin as opposed to being too thick because, I think if you were doing it where it started to get, I'm trying to think what an overall thickness might be. If you had like 4 quarters stacked on each other and that was the size of your dough, that might be a little bit too thick at that point. I guess I'm trying to think what else I could measure for that. Such a small measurement, right? But yeah, I would say err on the side of going towards being too thin as opposed to being too thick. Oh shoot, I lost you sound wise. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can see you, I can't hear anything. Oh, wait, I think I'm hearing something. Brian, are you there? Can you hear me? I'm wondering if my headphones broke. Let me try some other headphones. Brian, can you hear me? Unfortunately, I can't hear anything here. I don't know why.